Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Brewing with Jim.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Jim, and nice to see you, Joseph.
It's nice to see you as well, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thank you, audience, for tuning in, as always. This is a show where we get audience questions, and we just try to provide wisdom and insight from our experiences, from things that we've heard before, things that we've experienced, and today's no exception.
And answers.
And answers specifically,
Yes.
Hopefully we
for
can.
the questions.
Today's question gives us a lot of leeway. We can take this in a lot of directions. This is clearly, I think, from a student. But our question this morning, why is school so boring?
You're sure that's from a student and not a teacher?
I would imagine.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
you know, that's true.
Why is school so
Why
boring?
is school so boring?
Yeah, that's got to be a student.
This can go in a lot of directions, and I think being that it's especially not a theological question at all,
No.
we can really riff.
Okay, here we
Yeah.
go. Let's dive into it. First thought, school is not boring. All boring takes place inside the brain. And it's not the school that's boring. There are teachers who are monotonic and
Sure.
dredge on and on and on. And
Not us.
no, not us. There are teachers who are, excuse me, who are humorless. There are teachers who,
Not us. Okay.
not us, no. There are teachers who would actually work well as a sleep aid. I know that.
Sure.
That
Sure.
we just have all had teachers like that. And then there are other teachers, and I think most of the teachers here at the school are animated and
really just excellent.
really very good, easy to listen to, fun to listen to teachers.
Yeah.
When a person is bored, they are really bored because they think that they are wasting time, I think.
Sure.
That reminds me of a quote that I like from Einstein. Boredom is the residue of time wasted.
Interesting.
Okay.
I like that.
Most of some of the people who are here, some of the students who are here at this school, and probably every school are here to get a diploma, a degree, and to get out and get started with real life. Well, this is real life here. I mean, what's real life? Flipping burgers at a fast food store.
Sure.
That's not any more real life than being here to learn. But being here to learn will take boredom out because you are here to draw into your brain new thoughts. I think the person who is bored, there are exceptions. I get bored rarely, but most of the time when I am bored, I didn't finish the first thought, but that's okay. I'm aware of it, and because of that, it's okay. The only time I'm bored is when I'm in a social situation and somebody pins me to the wall and talks and talks and talks about some topic that is not interesting to me.
Sure.
And that's boredom. But in a school situation, realize first of all, well, not first of all, because I don't know what order these, there's no order of priority, but please understand and think about the teacher is interested in this subject, or the teacher wouldn't be teaching this subject. Now, maybe the teacher found this subject easy to understand and easy to develop some or gain some knowledge in and has thought about it. But I think for the most part, people teach a subject that they have a passion. If it's not a passion, it's at least a desire.
Certainly not always. You get in small Christian schools like ours, and I'm not saying that this is the case for anybody I'm aware of, but I know at my old school, for example, like you just kind of need, as a school, like coverage for sections that you need to offer. And it's like a small school cliche that like you're teaching a math class and an English class, and all right. So there is a world where you're not teaching a class that you're that
the
interested
point
in.
that I was going to make is that there are people who are interested in this subject.
Yes.
What makes them interested? And I would sit there and ponder that. Where is the interest in this subject?
Sure.
There's no interest in the way it's being presented. This guy is a bore.
Yeah.
But there's interest in the subject, and where is that interest? I don't have any thing about this subject I've never had that draws me in to want to know more about it. But if I'm going to sit in this class for a semester or for an academic year, let's find something that is the reason that the administration thinks that this subject is important for us to learn. And
Absolutely.
then I would sit there and that mental activity is going to erase the boredom.
Yeah.
It will eradicate the boredom. The boredom, it was almost a quippy joke at the beginning, but the boredom really does take place in the brain.
Sure.
Because the brain is just sitting there, either waiting to be spoon-fed facts so that I can...
That's exactly where my initial inclination on this question goes, is I was going to present the idea of like we have to start just physiologically, psychologically, what is boredom, you know?
Right.
And like you said, it's in the brain, and I think primarily if there's one source of boredom, you could call it like disengagement. It's the lack of.
It is. That's a good word.
It's not being stimulated. It's not being engaged. It's not being provoked, you know? And that can happen in a school setting, teacher or student. It can happen in either direction.
It can, yes.
There are bad teachers that exist in the world that are not engaging teachers.
Right.
That can bore their students.
But is it the responsibility of the teacher to engage the student? And maybe, yes. It could be argued either way. Yeah. But if it's... I'm not the entertainment committee here. I mean, what do you want me to do, juggle?
No.
I'm sorry we have to talk about these grammatical structures in this language that I'm teaching.
No.
But I think that you made the point that the brain is just doing nothing.
Sure.
If the brain is doing nothing, there's going to be boredom.
Yeah.
The brain is like muscles. It's not a muscle, but it's like muscles, and it needs to be exercised to become strong.
Yeah. And
the more it's exercised, the stronger you get. Well, you have to go to the brain gym and start lifting.
For sure. That was going to be my point, is like boredom in that scenario, or in that, you can call it maybe relationship, between a teacher and a student. The boredom can come from either side of that equation. Yes. A teacher can be bad or disengaging, but also, like you're saying, a student can be turned off to the participation or the effort or the engagement for a variety of reasons.
That's right.
On their end. And
that's right.
They, in either of those scenarios, the student is going to call the experience, quote, air quotes, boring, but it has drastically different causes. From each other.
It does. Well, my only experience is when I was in junior high and high school, and even in college, math to me was not interesting. Yeah. And I wasn't very good at it. Now, which came first? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Sure. But I think I could have been good at it if I had just found interest in doing it. If I had regarded algebra as a puzzle instead of as a course I have to take, then I want to solve the puzzle. Yeah. And the reason I mentioned that is because later in life, in my educational interpreting experience, I interpreted a lot of math classes, and I began to enjoy interpreting the math classes, even from rudimentary math, and this is a number line, up through calculus. Yeah. And I never took calculus, but I have interpreted calculus classes, and it became interesting to me that, I didn't know this concept, I didn't know this concept, and this is how this works. Yeah. Oh, man. I started to go to Khan Academy online and work problems just for fun. Don't let that get out.
That's amazing.
But I would do that just for fun, and I found it fascinating, and I wasn't bored with it anymore. Now, what happened? How did I get rid of the boredom? Well, I did the only thing I know to say to this question is get your brain going. Yeah. And start thinking about the topic. Now, your brain's going to get going one way or another, probably, and you start thinking about all the other topics and are distracted, and that, of course, is going to be defined ultimately as boredom.
You've identified something that I I experienced in my life a little bit too. And I think I've shared this before, particularly around math and reading in my life.
Okay.
If you had talked to Joseph Jasper as a middle school student or as a high school student, I would have told you I am not a reader.
Okay.
And I'm not a math person. These like subjects, these two big, broad, very different subjects, I just like, nope, those are not my thing. You know, I'm a history person. I love Bible class, you know, kind of got into the, whatever. What I discovered as I grew older, through college and then especially post-college, just adulthood, is I love language and reading, and I love math. And the difference, for me at least, it came from getting out of school. It came from getting away from almost like the structure and the rigidity and the rigor, frankly, of an educational institution saying you need to learn literature and you need to learn mathematics. And, you know, what felt like dragging me through a scope and sequence of novels I would never pick up on my own, or of, you know, mathematical concepts I would never encounter in real life, right? That's the classic go-to. But what I've found is, like, as part of my job as an educator, and particularly as like an ed tech, helping the school kind of in more administrative kind of support role. For example, I work with a lot of like assessment data, massive batches, millions of cells in a spreadsheet. Yeah, I need to know math to process
to do this
that,
right. Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's engaging to me because it's practical, because it's kind of open-ended. It's like a problem-solving situation.
For whatever reason,
And,
I guess it really doesn't matter. It just gets your brain going.
Yeah.
Let me talk about reading for just a moment, because I have an example that is as recent as yesterday in a class, and I will be anonymous here and not mention the student's name.
Sure.
But I have often in classes asked students, how many of you do any pleasure reading? And I may get one hand.
Yeah.
One.
No, zero,
there is no pleasure reading in the class. And one of the students yesterday said, do you read? Do you do pleasure reading? And I have been a reader since I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
I loved it. When I was in first grade, the teacher told my mom that I was reading at a fifth grade level. And it's because my dad took me to a library and taught me what libraries do. And here are all these books, and here's the children's, and you can go in, you can borrow one of these books and take it home.
Yeah.
That hooked me.
Yeah.
And I borrowed a book and I took it home, and I have been reading ever since. I keep a record, a table, a word table on all the books, on the books that I've read. As I read them and put them in there, it's pages and pages and pages. And one student said, how many books have you read? Is it like 50? Or is it like 50 or 100 or 1,000? And he was being hyperbolic when he said 1,000. I said, it's more than 1,000.
It's more than,
It's more than oh, no, I can't believe it. He was lost for words. And so the student who, one of the students said, I hate reading, but I see people who read and how much they enjoy it. I would like to learn to do that.
Yeah.
And I told this student, I will help you do this. Yes, it's not fun if you have never done it, but when you discover the joy of reading, you won't be bored ever the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I always have a book with me. I have
So
two
true.
in the car. I have 2 or 3 on my desk. I have e-books. I have hold-in-your-hand books. All of this. And I said, you will.
Excellent.
She said, I want to learn to do that, but I got to tell you, I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate reading. And I said, just start.
Yeah.
Just start. Read the back of a shampoo bottle. I don't care what it is you read, but read something.
Yeah.
And most probably English teachers would say, we do care what you read. Don't waste your time. Not me. Read anything.
Yeah.
Read a billboard. And read something so that you get into the habit of enjoying it, and you will enjoy it. I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
So boredom in school, the example I just gave was get your brain busy.
Yeah.
Get you now. We have a literature teacher here who was just chatting at lunch one time with a bunch of teachers, and he dropped a nugget, and he didn't know it was a nugget. And he said, he teaches literature, and he said, analysis will suck the life out of a piece of literature.
That's right.
And I went, boom. That's it.
There it is. Yeah.
Reading classics or assigned reading in an English class for me was never fun.
Yeah.
And when I got out of school, I started reading some of the classics, and I thought, boy, this is really good. And I don't have to get back to class and explain why the protagonist was toilet trained wrong. I don't have to all this analysis that goes on. And so...
Yeah, that's brilliant.
The end of this, are you bored in school? Well, get unbored.
Sure.
Fix it.
Let me get like final word on this, because I have a way of framing this that I think I think takes into account like even a historical perspective. In education, business, you'll hear this term like the factory model. And this, if we talk about what's referred to as the factory model of education, for audience members that may not know what that is, it's this idea that as a result of the Industrial Revolution, where we just assembly lined our entire economy, we brought that same philosophy to education in America, and frankly, kind of around the world, in like the early 1900s. And it's this idea of like a kid comes into our school, we just pound a bunch of information into their brains, and then years later we send them off and we assume they know everything they need to know. And it's very impersonal, and that's not really how the human brain works. So this factory model of education has been a dominant narrative, and what we're trying to do at CVCS, and what a lot of schools are trying to do, is kind of break that apart and treat education as a more humane and humanizing experience, where there is interaction, there's partnership, and there's engagement. There's like real engagement with students. Now, students still come to school with the perception, not knowing what it means or the significance of it or anything like that. Students will still show up to school or show up to a class assuming a factory model of education is still the atmosphere.
Oh, absolutely.
Here.
Yes.
And what that builds into them is an expectation of, I just need to come into class and sit at my desk and just kind of download information.
And it will happen to me.
And regurgitate back on a test. And that's what you said is key. It will happen to me.
To me.
That is inherently boring. I'm sorry. But students, if you're listening to this and you're confused about why this is boring, that's why.
That's right. And at the same time, know that schooling and education are two different concepts.
That's right.
It's possible to have either one without the other.
Yeah.
It is possible.
Yeah.
You're here for education, but that's not what's in the mindset of most students. And they're bored because they have to be here. They have to go through the hoops to get the grade. They're grade-driven, not learning-driven.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go into a lot of that right now and what the reasons are, but I could. And when they expect us to do the work for them.
Exactly.
It should be them doing the work. I was asked a question yesterday in one class, and I said, I think the answer to that question is, it was just one word. What is the term for this? And that question, I think, is in your notes. Find it.
Yeah.
And one student said, well, just tell us what it is. It would be easier. That exemplifies the whole attitude of, no, you find out what the answer is and come back and teach us next time we meet.
Yeah.
I know the answer. But that's you nailed it.
Yeah. So just to be explicit, if you're a CVCS student or parent or teacher, or if you're at CVCS at all and you're listening, I'll just be explicit. We're trying to not have a factory model of education at our school.
Right.
We view education fundamentally as a partnership. To be clear, it is not all on the students either. It is a partnership between teacher and students. There is reciprocation of engagement. There is a reciprocation of wisdom.
We don't have time now to talk about the relationship between the student and the teacher.
Sure.
But I will say briefly, this sounds like a whole other episode, but I will say that There is an axiom in teaching that, remember, teacher, you are their teacher, you are not their friend.
Yeah.
That is wrong. That is so wrong. The greatest teacher who ever lived calls me friend.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
if there is a relationship, now the friendship is not going to be the same as high schoolers together and teachers together. It'll be a different type of friendship, but at least there'll be something personal. If there is something personal that has been exchanged between the teacher and the student. I mean, do you know my dog's name? Do you know my family, and so forth? And the teacher can be a little bit vulnerable and say,
approachable.
I suffer these issues and so forth. Okay, when that happens, I think the boredom's going to be diluted.
That's right.
It will go away because this is a person I know.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
it doesn't happen in most universities with auditorium classes.
For sure.
But it can happen here in board. Okay.
Yeah,
we
I
talked
love
about
it.
this enough.
I think so.
I think there's more to say, but let's
No, this has been great.
make this it.
Let's go to the second segment, which
Okay.
is, we call it the Surprise Jim segment. It's a question that Jim does not know ahead of time that has nothing to do with our previous topic, and it's just for fun. Jim, can you tell us about either the last time or like a recent time that you just could not stop laughing? What is like the hardest that you've laughed at a thing like recently? What was like just the funniest thing you remember from, I don't know.
No, I can't, but I can. I can tell you, I'm a laugher,
Sure.
and I do laugh a lot.
Yes, you do.
And I do find things funny. You talked about the hardest laugh so hard you cry.
Yeah.
You know, roll on the floor laughter. Just there are times, mostly with my brother, because my brother's very funny and I'm borderline funny.
Sure.
And we notice things about people that are funny. Yes, I do have a sense of humor. Debbie and I, my wife, will after the day, when it's time to just slump and relax, and we're going to watch television or we'll watch we can make fun of the people on TV,
Absolutely.
and we do,
Yeah.
and a lot of that is funny.
Yeah.
There was. This was just, you said recently. There was a person on television. I hope you're not going to edit this out. We'll see. There was a person on television who was a game show contestant.
Okay.
And she had a physical characteristic that was so unusual. She had a lower lip that was the biggest lower lip I have ever seen in my life. And I've seen a lot of lower lips. Who hasn't? And this lip was just unbelievable to me. And I said, to Debbie, I wonder how much money she spends on lipstick. And Debbie says, I think she probably gets it at Sherman and Williams. And I started laughing, thinking about, does she use a roller? Does she have, I mean, we just roll with these things,
Of
you know,
course,
and laugh. We laugh frequently. That's part of life. I grew up in a funny family.
Yeah.
Humor was.
Me too.
Now I watch humorless people. There are people who seem to be humorless.
Yeah.
And I wonder what their life is like.
It must be miserable.
I can't imagine. That's the only answer I can think of.
I love
He
it.
said
No, that's fantastic.
It's frequent.
Yeah.
Now there are times when by culture it's inappropriate to laugh.
Mm-hmm.
To laugh hilariously.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe a funeral. And, you know, but it's okay to have something sort of humorous and people will laugh a little bit, but nobody really just rolls on the floor, holds their sides and at a funeral. And my brother and I have been seated next to each other in funerals, and he will say something quietly. Sotto voce, sort of in my ear, and I will say, and we will feed back and forth a little bit, but nobody else hears us.
Yep.
And we start to laugh, but we have to suppress it. And suppressing laughter makes the laughter even stronger.
Yeah.
So,
That's right.
especially when we were kids, because you know you can't be doing that here. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
No, I hope. I hope everybody can remember something that is recent that made
Absolutely.
laughter really, really robust.
Yes, absolutely. That's fantastic. I love making that question, that answer about just like the joy that laughter brings to life in general.
Yes.
Like there's no other way to live.
I agree.
You have to laugh.
If I had to, if I had 100 people lined up around the perimeter of a room just standing there, and I had to pick one for a friend, and what questions would you ask? One would be, do you have a sense of humor?
Sure.
Do you find things funny?
I wouldn't ask a question. I would tell a joke. And
I would. Well, you know what? I don't tell a lot of jokes.
Sure.
I don't tell jokes at all, and neither does my brother. But we hear lines that are good punchlines. We'll just put them in our head and keep them there sometimes for years until the situation comes up, and then just deliver it. That was
absolutely.
And timing is. I've enjoyed learning about humor. Jerry Lewis. I don't know, many of our audience people will remember Jerry Lewis, but a comedian, and Martin and Lewis were a partnership and made many movies together. Jerry Lewis taught humor at UCLA. And he taught that the three components of humor are timing, spontaneity, and surprise.
Yep.
And those have to be there. Betty White was talking about humor one time, and she said timing is the most important part. And you watch pause placement, and you be very careful about the reaction of other people and feed on it and so forth. There is a book out called Comedy is Serious Business, and about how to be comedic.
Amazing.
And I have read a couple of books on how to write with humor in the writings and so forth. So it does require some thought. It's not just a reaction.
Yeah.
It's a mental processing.
It is,
and it's quick. Now, somebody has said that primitively, laughter comes from victory. A wild animal, a prey, not the prey, but the predator, will be victorious. I'm not quite sure how to say this. Be victorious over the. Here's the dead animal lying there, okay?
Yeah, like
he caught it. And his reaction is to throw his head back, bare his teeth, and growl. That's laughter. That's what people do when they laugh. And if I feel victorious because I understood something that was a little bit required process, and I understood it before somebody else did it, it makes it funnier.
Yeah.
I don't know if that primitive example is accurate or not, but
That's
interesting.
amazing.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay.
Look, let's wrap this up.
Okay.
This has been another episode of Brewing with Jim. As always, we want to extend the invitation to our audience to send us questions that you may have for yourselves. We have an email address that is brewingwithjim@gmail.com. We always check that, and that's where we get our questions. So feel free to let us know your questions or just more about yourselves. brewingwithjim@gmail.com.
Or critique us, too.
Oh, yeah. Let us know how we're doing
questions.
a terrible job. No.
Well, I didn't mean negative critique. No, praise only.
Yeah. You can send, if you have negative critiques, you can just send that directly to Jim. And
and I will forward it nowhere.
Exactly.
Yes, that's the reason God invented the delete key.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thanks for listening, y'all. Have a good week.
Yeah. Talk to you soon.
The topics that are covered and the answers that are offered during episodes of Brewing with Jim are designed to mine the wisdom attained from a life of pastoral ministry and care. They do not constitute professional or clinical training or expertise in the areas of counseling or mental health. CVCS and its podcast network want to provide a platform for the discipleship of our community. Brewing with Jim is our attempt to foster that environment in a format that is accessible for everyone to participate in. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during the show are the speaker's own, and they may or may not represent the views, thoughts, or opinions of Capistrano Valley Christian Schools or its faculty. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. This episode has been a production of the Capistrano Valley Christian Schools Podcast Network. Capistrano Valley Christian Schools is a Christian JK through 12 school in San Juan Capistrano, California. Be sure to check out, subscribe to, and leave a review of this show and the other shows on our network on your podcast player of choice. Doing so supports the school community in a multitude of ways. For more information about the CVCS Podcast Network or any of our other shows, check out cvcs.org or email podcasts@cvcs.org. On behalf of the whole network, this is Mr. Jasper saying thank you again for listening and stay tuned for more.